I'm not even going to bother with an intro. I'm just going to say that I love this episode, and it's a 5 out of 5, and I'm really, really hooked. I just want to watch the next episode, so I'm just going to start talking about it. So, this episode is great. The development between Roxy and Ramona is insane. I know I said this before, but I am firmly adamant in my position on this now. Don't watch the anime unless you've seen the movie or read the comics, because I don't think the story will be as strong for you and resonate as much if you don't have that extra context of, like, the movie or the comics. Because, like, a lot of the reasons why I really like the Roxy Ramona fight and all of their scenes in this episode is mainly because of all the, like, pre-context we have from other source materials. So, like, in this sort of fight, you find out that Roxy's really fucking mad at Ramona because Ramona just up and left her, like, really suddenly. And it was a really dick thing to do because, you know, she wasn't thinking about Roxy's feelings at all. She was viewing Ramona as very selfish in her decision to just suddenly leave her behind. In the movie, Roxy's really furious at Ramona because Ramona, in front of everyone, is just kind of like, oh, you know, our relationship, it was just a phase. I was just a little, like, curious. I just wanted to know, like, you know, what it would be like dating a girl.
You and her? It was just a phase.
Just a phase?
You had a sexy phase?
It meant nothing. I didn't think it would count. It meant nothing?
I was just a little bi-curious.
And so, in terms of the actual character development here, we get to see flashbacks. In the movie, and even in the comics, there's a lot of flashbacks. But the flashbacks are really, like, surface level. They don't go that deep, because, honestly, if every single character who needed one got a flashback that was 3 to 5 minutes long, the movie would be 50 minutes longer, probably. And it was already kind of a long runtime for a movie, especially with how many characters were happening and how much was going on, and the fact that, like, once a character is defeated, they're not coming back in the movie. Like, it would be a lot of wasted time in terms of, like, the pacing. It would drag the pacing down. But in an 8-episode anime, you have a lot more time to work with. So you have a lot more time to just develop these side characters, especially when you've sidelined your main character, which I'm fine with, because if you're developing your side characters meaningfully, that is very chill. So in terms of this episode, we get to see a flashback, which is essentially just an extended flashback of, like, Ramona and Roxy's relationship, and we find out that it was, like, actually a pretty fucking meaningful one. Like, they, at least Roxy, really, really, really cared for Ramona, and Ramona really cared about Roxy too at a point. And then she just kind of up and moved away, and Roxy was just forever bummed about it, and then eventually grew more bitter and bitter as Ramona kept distancing herself more and more, and just never looked back at Roxy, just completely cold turkey cut her off from everything. Because Ramona is a character who famously doesn't like to talk about the past, wants to keep moving forward, wants to keep moving away from the past. Literally, every form of media starts with her moving to Canada because she wanted to escape her past. And her first conversations with Scott, some of them, she literally just says, like, I don't like talking about the past. I don't like it. Even in this anime, they made a point to, like, recreate those scenes specifically because it's a very core, fundamental part of her character. And it's something that needs to, like, remain intact for any adaptation of, like, Scott Pilgrim. Because, again, that's, like, the foundation of her character. But actually getting to see a different glimpse into the past is very interesting. And then the fact that the fight, oh my god, the fight takes place, it's sudden, it happens in a film-like movie DVD rental place. When they start fighting and then the shelf falls over on them, because the action is just going to continually escalate, you don't want to, like, open with your strongest set piece, you want to keep building up and up and up and up towards it. When the shelf falls on top of them and then they, like, fall into different films and medias, it is so lively and creative and full of, like, passion, and I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And just seeing them fight across different, like, films, and the direction of the episode changes depending on what type of media they're in is so cool. Like, when they're in the old, like, anime Japanese aesthetic, and the animation, like, transitions into a more, not old-timey aesthetic, but, like, something that's much more typical of old action anime with, like, the, I don't know how to explain it, but, like, when I saw this camera shot here, I'll put it on screen, like, this shot felt so much like, oh yeah, this is the anime character running up to the other anime character, and then they're gonna start, like, boxing, like, you know, throwing hands and shit. Like, I've seen this camera angle so many times in so many animes that seeing it here immediately, I was just like, oh my god, they're actually doing it, like, 1-to-1, holy shit. And then as the drama keeps escalating and escalating, Roxy and Ramona are, like, you know, exchanging words with each other. There's even a part where they're on the TV that Kim and her boss are watching of the DVD store, and then Kim pauses it while Roxy's on screen, and so Roxy's like frozen in time, and then Kim lets Ramona get a clean hit in, and then Roxy gets hit out of the TV, goes to the remote, beats the fucking shit out of it, and I was just losing it the entire time this was happening. It was great. And as the fight keeps like escalating, the moment you see that Ramona and Roxy are on like the plane, and Ramona's talking about how she's like, she feels bad, she never wanted to hurt Roxy, and they're going back and forth, and Roxy even like, accepts the apology. Once you see that they're on the plane, they're like, okay, Roxy's gonna fall out of the plane somehow, and Ramona's gonna save her, and then it's gonna be like the reconciliation moment, like, okay, now they're like more chill with each other. But actually seeing it animated, the sequence of them literally falling through these different films and media in the background was really mesmerizing. And then we cut into the scene of them lying on the floor as like the sprinklers indoors are going off because they've like caused such a ruckus and commotion and completely trashed the fucking store because they're fighting. When the sprinklers are going on and you can like hear the muffled sounds of like Roxy crying because like it's a very tender emotional moment, there's a very real sense of like vulnerability in this shot, and I don't really know how to explain it, but it's great, it's wonderful. And then we transition into them like having kind of made up in a way, and this anime, I'm now realizing, is gonna be about the, I guess, rehabilitation or reconciliation of the evil exes. And this is where the movie comes into place, right? Because think about it. Lucas Lee is an actor, and he mentioned, it was out of nowhere, and I didn't say this, but like Todd has dipped his toes into acting, which is crazy, because like if Todd's dipping his toes into acting, Lucas Lee would notice, and then they would exchange a little word about it, right? Neil has just written a movie, so I think Todd and Lucas are going to be auditioning for the main role of that movie, because of course, and then on top of that, you have the twins' robot was like fucking around in the background of this episode at one point, and Gideon has this scene where he goes to Julie, which is at like towards the end of the episode, where Gideon reveals that his real name was actually Gordon, and he's Gordon Goose instead of Gideon Graves, and now he's crashing at Julie's place because he's lost everything. Like, all of these characters are being set up to come back into the plot in a different way than they originally had, because there's no one to fight but Ramona. Like, Roxy fights Ramona. She doesn't fight Scott because Scott isn't here in this version. And even in the movie, she wanted to fight Scott, but she was technically actually fighting Ramona because, Scott didn't want to hit a girl, right? Now we actually have the chance for Ramona to have conversations with the evil exes when or before punches are even thrown. Because in the movie, the context of every fight scene was always under the impression that, like, they were just going to start fighting Scott, throwing hands, and then quipping while they're throwing hands, right? That's why a lot of the fight scenes in Scott Pilgrim, they have like a give and take where the villain is winning and winning and winning, goes over to make conversation with someone, usually Ramona, to talk about something, or Scott interjects about like, did you seriously like date this guy? Like saying a bunch of stuff like that, and then Ramona gives a little bit of exposition while the fight calms down, and then they go back to fighting and it's like escalated in some way. The biggest example is obviously like Matthew Patel, where before they're just fighting hand to hand, and then after the flashback scene, it becomes he has mystical powers, and he starts using his mystical powers, and it's like, whoa, what the hell? This is crazy. Went from 0 to 100 real quick. But in terms of the anime, now we get the chance to just have them talk, and that's awesome. I love that. But speaking of talking, Kim and Knives have a scene where they don't even really talk, and they just like play their instruments together, and it's a really weird, and it almost kind of feels like out of place in terms of the rest of the episode, but I think it's going to be set up for stuff that comes later in a future episode, because at the end of the scene, Kim realizes she's like late for work, and then Knives is like talking to Steven about like, oh, you've only been playing bass for like 4 hours? Oh my god, like, have you ever thought about like joining a band, like being in a band, like making music? Have you ever thought about that, Knives? Because she's always seemed so interested in music. Like, she's always a fan of Sex Bomb, The Clash of Demon Head, like, she's always a fan of these bands, but yeah, she'd probably have an interest in playing music herself. So if she ends up joining the band, that'd be like a really cool thing for Knives to do, in terms of like, now that she doesn't have Scott, she can actually just like focus on being a character outside of him, because she deserves better. Yes sir, yes sir. And it's really interesting. I can't wait to see like what the show does with these characters, because like, I'm amazed at the fact that they're actually making a cast of characters that is so wide. They're giving a lot of them something to do, and they've even already set up things in the future, like with the movie and with the robot and all this like random stuff. And I really hope that like it all comes together in the end meaningfully, because I worry that they're cooking so much shit in the pot it's gonna overflow, and then like half of the things they set up aren't gonna be like resolved or paid off like meaningfully. But the ride is very enjoyable so far, and I've always been of the opinion that even if an ending really sucks, it doesn't ruin everything, but it does make it feel worse if like the ending is really bad and then you're building up all this great character writing and progression just to a lackluster shitty ending that, you know, at best is like you just ignore it and you pretend it doesn't exist, or at worst actively undermines all of the development. I worry that the ending of this anime might be like a, I don't know, like if, because it's all like a what if, I worry that they're gonna do something, because like I've noticed this trend. A lot of things, for some reason in anime, they do like crazy over the top endings when they could just do something simple. I really worry that like it's gonna end with Scott like getting back to Ramona, and then it like rewinds back to the first fight or back to when they first met, and then like Scott walking up to Ramona and saying something different or something really cheesy like that. And it's like, no, just please let all this character development actually mean something. Don't reset all these characters. I really, really want these characters to stay this developed, because holy shit, all of them are getting something to do, and that is wonderful.